They told me I wasn't invited to the party I paid for. Not just a gift, I planned the whole thing. Tent flowers, food, the works. $9,000. A week before the big day, a text popped up. "We're keeping it small, you're not on the list." Then my mum added, "It's not personal." But I made sure it was. I cancelled everything. And for the first time in my life, I didn't apologise. I didn't explain. I just walked away because I finally understood I was never family. I was their backup plan, and I was done being used. Maggie had always been the glue that held everything together. At 42, she had no husband, no kids, and no distractions. At least that's how her family saw it. A senior IT project manager by day and part-time crisis manager for her family by night. She had long accepted that when anything broke physically, emotionally, or financially, her phone would ring. She answered every time. So when her parents' 40th wedding anniversary approached, Maggie knew no one else would take initiative. Her sister Julie had immediately bailed out, texting, "Wish I could help, but our mortgage is killing us right now." Her brother Dan had said he'd see what he could do, which in Maggie's experience meant he wouldn't do a damn thing. And so, like she had so many times before Maggie stepped in, she didn't mind. Not at first. She actually enjoyed planning. She took time off from work, combed through event vendors, compared rates, read Yelp reviews, until her eyes blurred. She knew exactly what her parents loved. The tent had to be white and elegant, the kind that looked like it came straight out of a magazine spread. She went with a high peak canopy framed with soft white draping and fairy lights. For catering, Maggie chose a company that specialized in farm-to-table meals. Her father, a picky eater with an ever-evolving list of dietary restrictions, required a customized menu. Gluten-free, low sodium, no shellfish, minimal dairy, and absolutely no mushrooms. The catering manager looked hesitant until Maggie offered to double the tasting fee if they could work around it. They agreed, then came the flowers. Her father had once told her in one of their rare heart-to-heart conversations that blue orchids reminded him of his mother, a quiet woman who raised 5 kids with more grace than most people give saints. That memory stayed with Maggie, so she hunted down a boutique florist who could special order the flowers despite the season being wrong. They weren't cheap, but it felt meaningful. She arranged meetings, sent deposits, updated spreadsheets. Every night she revised budgets, tweaked details. This wasn't just about making her parents happy. It was about finally feeling like she belonged. Like maybe this time her efforts would be seen, appreciated. But even as she planned there were cracks in the foundation, Julie never once asked how things were going. Dan avoided calls. Her mom occasionally replied to Maggie's long update texts with a thumbs up emoji. Her dad at least seemed interested. He'd nod when she told him about the tent or ask small questions about the menu. When she mentioned the blue orchids, he smiled in a soft, nostalgic way and said, "She would have loved that." That moment stayed with Maggie. It validated the cost, the effort, the stress. She told herself this wasn't about recognition, but truthfully she hoped for it, just this once. Then one afternoon, while talking with the florist, she casually mentioned the story behind the orchids. The florist, a gentle, middle-aged woman with silver-streaked hair, paused. "Oh, that's lovely," she said. "But blue orchids don't naturally exist. Most people pick them for aesthetic. No deep meanings usually." Maggie blinked. "My dad said they reminded him of his mother." The florist smiled kindly. I'm sure he meant it metaphorically, but it didn't sit right. That night, Maggie pulled out an old photo album. She flipped through pages of birthdays, graduations, holidays. There were pictures of her grandmother surrounded by roses, tulips, lies, but no orchids, not once. She called her aunt, her dad's sister, and asked, "Did Grandma like blue orchids?" There was a pause on the line, followed by a small chuckle. "Orchids? Oh, honey." She was allergic, hated the smell. Maggie sat back in her chair, the receiver still warm in her hand. Her father had lied. Not cruelly, not loudly, but he had created a moment that meant something only to her because she had believed it was real. It was the first crack in a story she thought she was writing together with her family. But maybe she had been writing alone this whole time. Long before the anniversary party, long before the orchids and menus and cancelled calls, Maggie had been the quiet caretaker of a family that never quite looked at her directly. It wasn't that they hated her, it was worse. They depended on her without ever acknowledging what that meant. There was the time when Julie got the flu right before her second child's first birthday party. Maggie drove 3 hours with decorations and snacks, cleaned the backyard, inflated balloons, and even dressed up as a princess because the performer canalled. She didn't get a thank you, not even in the family group chat. Julie posted a photo the next day, so grateful for everyone who made today's special. Maggie wasn't tagged. All the Christmas Maggie paid for without telling anyone. Their dad had lost a part-time gig unexpectedly. Their mum said they'd keep it small this year. Maggie refused to let that happen. She bought the tree, wrapped all the gifts, even wrote from Santa on the tags. On Christmas morning, her parents acted surprised. Her mum actually looked her in the eye and said, "Oh, good, I was worried this year would feel empty." Then turned to Julie and said, "You always make things feel festive." But the moment that stayed with Maggie the most, the moment she never spoke of, was Julie's wedding. Julie had called her one evening chipper and excited. "It's going to be small," she'd said, "just close friends and people who really match the vibe." Maggie didn't understand at first. "Of course, let me know what I can do to help." Julie hesitated. "Actually, we were thinking maybe you'd skip this one. It's just, you don't really match the energy we're going for." The words were said lightly, like a stylist offering advice, but they cut deeper than Julie realized. Maggie had nodded, forced a smile into her voice. "Yeah, totally, I get it." Then she'd hung up and sat in her living room for hours, wondering what energy she was. Too plain, too quiet, too responsible. She didn't tell anyone. She just mailed the wedding gift early, a sleek espresso machine from the registry, and went back to work on Monday like nothing happened. That became a pattern. Maggie didn't cry, she didn't argue, she rationalized. She told herself love wasn't about inclusion, that sometimes people forgot to appreciate that being useful was enough. She built a mythology in her mind. If she worked harder, gave more, stayed silent longer, one day they'd look at her and say, "We couldn't do this without you." One day she'd be indispensable, not just in service, but in presence. That's why the anniversary meant something. Not the party itself, but the hope buried beneath it. The dream that this time, after all these years, they'd look at her differently. When her father smiled about the orchids, when her mother asked what the caterers were planning, when Julie texted, "Looks fancy," she thought maybe, just maybe, she was finally in the picture, not behind the scenes. She imagined standing beside them under the glowing canopy holding a glass of wine while someone clink-ticked theirs and said, "This party's amazing. Who planned it?" And her parents would smile, gesture toward her and say, "Maggie did. She always comes through." That fantasy played in her mind like a comforting lullaby, just loud enough to drown out the usual silence. But that was before the message, before the text that said she wasn't invited, before her mother added, "It's not personal. It was never personal when they erased her. It was never personal when they forgot her birthday, or when Julie brought her new boyfriend to Thanksgiving but forgot to save Maggie a seat. It was never personal when they expected her to show up, pay up, fix things, and disappear again. She had done everything, planned everything, because for once she wanted to be in the room, not just the one setting it up. And now she wasn't even on the list. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the message came. Maggie had just finished a meeting and was sitting at her kitchen table sipping reheated coffee and reviewing final notes with the catering company. The countdown was on 7 days until the anniversary party. Everything was in motion. Tent scheduled, flowers en route, menu finalized. She even booked a local violinist to play her parents' favorite songs during the cocktail hour. Then her phone buzzed. It was a text from Aunt Claire, her mother's older sister. Just 10 words. "By the way, we're keeping it small. You're not included." Maggie stared at the screen, convinced she misread it. She read it again, then a third time, her stomach clenched, heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Maybe it was a joke, a weird attempt at humor. Claire wasn't known for her subtlety. She waited. Maybe another message would follow, something like, "LOL, just kidding," or "sent to the wrong person," but nothing came. 5 minutes passed, then her phone buzzed again. This time it was her mother. "It's not personal, we're just keeping it intimate. Hope you understand." Maggie didn't move. She didn't type. She didn't blink. Her mind spun through every file she had mentally stored, every expense, every email, every vendor booked, every ounce of energy she had poured into this event. The money wasn't the issue, it was the intention. She had planned something beautiful for them with love. And they cut her out like trimming a guest list for a dinner party. Not even a phone call, not even a conversation. She wasn't just uninvited, she was disposable. The word intimate clawed at her like she was a stranger, like she didn't belong and not personal. That was the worst of it because it was personal. Every time they overlooked her, every time they forgot to include her, it had always been personal. Dismissal wrapped in politeness, silence covered with sugar. She wanted to scream, to call her mom and demand an explanation, to ask how they could do this to her after everything. But she didn't. Instead, she just sat there. Memories flooded in, her mum brushing off her science fair project in middle school to help Julie with cheerleading, her dad skipping her college graduation because Dan had a golf tournament. Every skipped holiday card, every missing seat at the table, every "you understand, don't you?" Yes, she understood. She had always understood. Understood that her needs were second. Understood that silence was expected. Understood that giving more didn't guarantee love, just more requests. And yet, despite everything, she had convinced herself this time would be different. She had spent nights researching floral symbolism, calling venues after hours, paying deposits with her own money. She even booked a vintage car service to take her parents from the ceremony space to the dinner tent, thinking it would make them feel like royalty. She did all of that without hesitation because that's what you do for people you love. But what do you do when those people don't love you back the same way? What do you do when they thank you with exclusion? The ache wasn't loud, it was quiet, a deep, slow unraveling inside her chest. The kind of pain that doesn't make you cry, it makes you empty. Maggie locked her phone and placed it face down on the table. She didn't call anyone, didn't rant, didn't beg. She sat in her too quiet kitchen, surrounded by spreadsheets and color-coded lists, and realized something devastating. She wasn't invited to the party she paid for, and nobody even thought that was strange. That night, Maggie couldn't sleep. Her mind kept circling back to the messages, replaying the phrasing, the punctuation, the absence of apology. She scrolled through her texts, rereading old conversations with her mum, searching for something, anything that hinted at what had changed, or if she had missed something. Then she noticed something odd. A month ago, around the time she had confirmed the venue, her mum had sent a message that seemed off. It was a vague response to one of Maggie's long updates. "Sounds good. I'll loop in Claire." At the time, Maggie had assumed it meant her aunt would help coordinate. Now, under the weight of new context, it felt colder, strategic. She clicked on her call log. Claire and her mum had been in contact almost daily during the weeks Maggie had been arranging everything, and yet not once had they asked for her input on the guest list. Curious and unsettled, Maggie opened her email and checked her archived messages. One subject line caught her eye: anniversary guest list update. It was forwarded to her by accident, buried in a string of logistical emails. She clicked. Inside was a thread between her mother and Claire dated 2 weeks before Maggie made any bookings. "Let's keep it under 30 people. Close friends only her mum had written." Claire replied, "And Maggie?" Her mother's response was sharp, almost dismissive. "I think it's better if she's not involved. Less stress all around. Less stress." Maggie's breath caught. That single phrase cracked something inside her chest. She sat frozen, reading the words over and over until they blurred on the screen. It wasn't an afterthought. It wasn't about space or budget. They had planned to exclude her from the beginning while she was busy pouring thousands of dollars and countless hours into something they never intended her to be part of. And they didn't even have the courage to tell her. That night, she sat in the dark with only the hum of her refrigerator for company. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was the echo of every moment she had ever been overlooked, rewritten, or ignored. Her mind pulled her back to a childhood memory, one that hit harder than she expected. She was 15, sitting at the kitchen table while her mum wrapped a gift for Julie's graduation. Maggie had just passed her AP exams and had brought home a perfect report card. Her father had muttered a distracted good job, but her mum hadn't said anything. As Julie walked in, her mum smiled and said, "Raising you has been the hardest but most rewarding thing I've ever done. Having you was my greatest sacrifice." Maggie remembered the way her heart squeezed at those words, not from pride, but from distance, because her mother never said anything like that to her, not then, not ever. In fact, Maggie couldn't recall her mother ever referring to raising her as anything close to a sacrifice or a reward. It was always, "Maggie doesn't need much, or she's independent, thank God." And Maggie had worn that like a badge, thinking it meant she was strong. But now she saw it for what it really was, code for we don't have to try with her. She had been the path of least resistance for them, the one who didn't complain, the one who filled in the gaps and never asked for more. But this was too far. Something inside her didn't just crack, it shifted. For the first time, Maggie didn't feel sad. She felt hollow. And inside that hollowness, something cold and resolute began to take shape. They had made their choice. And now it was her turn. By Wednesday morning, Maggie had a plan. Not a tantrum, not revenge, just quiet, calculated clarity. She started with the tent. The contract allowed cancellation up to 48 hours before the event with a partial refund. She didn't hesitate. One phone call, a few clicks, and it was done. The representative tried to confirm. "You're sure you want to cancel? This is a full setup for a 40-person event." "I'm sure," Maggie replied, voice steady. Next came the catering. She had booked through a high-tier event service that offered fund security. She opened a dispute citing a significant change in the event scope and guest list. Within hours, the funds were frozen. Maggie exhaled, not with satisfaction, but with finality. Then the car service cancelled. The violinist cancelled. She debated the florist. The orchids were already in transit. A loss she would accept. Somehow it felt poetic that they would arrive for no one. Lastly, the venue deposit. She flagged the payment through her bank and submitted documentation showing her name as primary organizer and financial sponsor. Within a day, the deposit was in dispute. She did it all from her kitchen, the same place she had planned everything. She didn't pace or scream. She didn't cry. It was methodical, the same way she managed high-stakes IT projects. Identify problem, contain risk, execute. By Thursday night, the silence from her family was deafening. No one had responded to the group text where she had last shared menu updates. No calls, no thank yous, no questions. Then came Friday. The phone rang for the first time around 800 a.m. Her father. She declined it. It rang again at 8:07, then 8:13, then again. And again. By mid-afternoon, the missed call count reached 17, her father, her mother, Aunt Claire, then back to her father again. She didn't answer. It wasn't until the 18th call, nearly 900 p.m., that she finally picked up. "Maggie," her dad's voice barked through the receiver, "what the hell happened?" Maggie paused, then said slowly and clearly, "It's not personal," and hung up. She turned off her phone, poured herself a glass of wine, and sat by the window. Outside, the world kept moving. Cars passed. Porch lights flicked on. Someone walked a dog across the street. But inside her apartment, it was still. Saturday came and went. Maggie didn't check social media. She didn't text Amanda, the only cousin she halfway trusted. She didn't wonder how the party was going. She already knew. By Sunday, the internet filled in the blanks. It was Amanda, of course. She posted a few filtered photos with the caption, "A beautiful evening for two beautiful souls, Hatch family first." Maggie clicked through the pictures slowly. There was no tent, just a few mismatched folding tables in the backyard, plastic tablecloths rippling in the wind, a cooler on the grass beside a rusty patio chair. The food looked store-bought, probably sandwiches from the local market. The flowers were carnations, pink, wilted, and stuffed into a mason jar like an afterthought. In one photo, her father stood in the background with his arms crossed, looking like someone just told him the grill exploded. Another showed her mother with two of her sister's eyes, puffy makeup, uneven, forcing a smile. It wasn't just a ruined party. It was a portrait of disappointment. And no one had reached out. Not to explain, not to apologize, just radio silence. But for once, silence felt like peace. Monday morning started like any other until Maggie's phone buzzed with a message she hadn't expected. It was from Derek, a friend she hadn't spoken to in nearly 4 years. They'd worked together briefly at a consultancy firm, shared a few late-night project crises, a handful of inside jokes, and then drifted apart with no drama, just time. His message read, "Hey, hope you're okay. Heard from someone at your folks' party. Are you all right? People were saying you had some kind of breakdown and cancelled everything last minute. Just wanted to check in." Maggie stared at the message, her hands going cold, her stomach twisted. She didn't respond right away. She just read it again, slower, letting each word cut a little deeper. A breakdown, that's what they were saying. She opened Instagram again, scrolled to Amanda's photos, and checked the comments this time. One read, "Shame, what happened? Mental health is no joke." Another, "Can't believe she'd ruin their day like that." And another blunt and brutal hope she gets help. There it was, the story they'd chosen to tell. She wasn't excluded. She was unstable, unfit, unwell. That was the narrative now. Maggie sat back in her chair, stunned, not angry yet, just numb. There were few things in life she still believed her family wouldn't do, but this felt like a betrayal on a different level. She'd been erased before, ignored, undervalued, but now they were rewriting her entirely, undermining her sanity to protect their image, painting her as the problem so they could look like victims. And they hadn't even reached out to warn her, not a single call to say, "This might get out of hand." They just let it happen, probably started it themselves. Her mind raced through every conversation, every kind gesture, every memory she had tried to hold on to, like proof that things weren't as bad as they seemed. But they were worse even. This wasn't about a party anymore. This was about her name, her credibility, her dignity. The Maggie they described to others wasn't her. But if enough people heard it, if enough people believed it, would it matter? For a few moments, she considered calling her father, asking outright, "Did you say these things?" But she didn't. Instead, she closed the app, turned her phone face down, and sat in silence. Then she opened her laptop. First, she logged into the shared cloud folder where she had been storing her parents' tax documents. She had handled their filings for the last 6 years, free of charge and of course. She deleted the shared access, removed her autofill credentials, and wiped the history clean. Then she opened the maintenance app for their HVAC subscription. 2 years ago, their furnace had died in the middle of winter. She paid for the annual coverage plan. She cancelled it. After that, she logged into her banking dashboard. Over the years, she had sent them small, consistent payments, groceries, emergency dentist bills, utility gaps, each one rationalized in the moment. She turned off every automatic transfer. It wasn't a tantrum. It was a reclaiming, not just of her money or time, but of her narrative. If they wanted to believe she was the problem, fine. But she didn't owe them the tools to keep mistreating her. This wasn't about making them suffer, it was about finally choosing herself. Maggie stood stretched and poured herself a fresh cup of coffee. She added a little cinnamon, the way she used to when life felt too heavy. As she took her first sip, something inside her felt lighter. Not free, not yet, but grounded. The storm could spin around her. The whispers could travel. But she wasn't broken. She was done being polite about being erased. It took less than 48 hours for the silence to break. First came Julie. Maggie's phone rang while she was in the grocery store, her cart half filled with frozen meals and almond milk. She saw her sister's name on the screen and debated answering. But curiosity has always won. Mags. Julie began without pause. What the hell is going on? Maggie didn't reply. You cancelled everything and ghosted the family. Mum's been crying for days. Dad's livid. You humiliated them. That word humiliated, as if Maggie had stormed the party with a megaphone instead of stepping quietly back. I didn't do anything you wouldn't have, Maggie said calmly. Julie scoffed. Don't twist this. You know how sensitive Mum is. And doing it the day before, that's cruel. Maggie swallowed. I wasn't invited. There was a pause, long and heavy. That's not the point, Julie said finally. You should have handled it better. You're the responsible one. Maggie hung up. An hour later, a message popped up from Aunt Claire. We all make mistakes, sweetheart, but punishing your parents like this is beneath you. Maggie stared at the words, her jaw tightening. Beneath her? Was silence now a form of punishment? She ignored it. That evening, a letter arrived, real paper, real ink, her mother's handwriting, unmistakable curving letters that always tilted slightly right. Inside 3 pages of carefully worded disappointment. No apology, no ownership, just soft scolding, veiled guilt. And phrases like, "You've always been our steady one." And families stumble, but we don't abandon. Maggie folded the letter neatly and placed it in a drawer. She didn't tear it up. She didn't frame it. She just put it away. The next day, the requests resumed. Her dad texted about a printer issue. Her mum called to ask if she still had the plumber's number for the leaking sink. Julie messaged asking if she could help figure out their taxes this year because things were a mess. It was like nothing had happened, like they could just skip past the wreckage and return to the version of Maggie that handled everything without question. She didn't reply to any of them. Instead, she opened her calendar and deleted every recurring reminder she had set for them. Medication refills, insurance premium, due dates, tax prep sessions. Then she called Comcast and took herself off her parents' internet billing account. She sent one final email to her family's shared folder, the one she had built years ago to keep them organized. Going forward, please manage your accounts and responsibilities independently. I will no longer be available for household financial or logistical support. No signature, no warmth, just facts. She didn't check if anyone replied. By the end of the week, Maggie felt the shift. There were fewer calls, the group chat went quiet. Even Amanda had stopped liking her posts. At work, she started arriving early again, took on a new client. Her boss complimented her focus. In the evenings, she returned to her woodworking hobby, something she hadn't touched in years. She sanded old wood, smooth-carved, careful angles, and let her hands create something that asked nothing from her. She didn't miss the chaos. She missed the idea of family, the illusion that maybe someday she would be pulled in instead of pushed aside. But illusions are dangerous, and she was done living inside one. The silence didn't last long. Maggie had just settled into the rhythm of solitude when the first twist landed. Her brother Dan texted on a lazy Saturday morning, "Yo, Mum's sink is busted. Can you swing by and take a look?" No greeting, no acknowledgement of the implosion that had occurred, just a casual ask like nothing had changed. Maggie stared at the message in disbelief, not even a question mark. It wasn't a request, it was a default expectation, like her silence had expired and she was due to resume her role. She didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another message. Pretty sure it's the valve again. You fixed it last time, remember? As if memories of fixing things should automatically translate into willingness. Maggie typed and deleted 3 different responses before settling on the simplest one. Call a plumber. She hit send and tossed her phone aside. By evening, her mother called. Maggie let it ring out, a voicemail followed. When she played it back, her mother's voice was thick with theatrical sadness. Maggie, it's me. Your dad says we should give you space, but I don't understand what we did wrong. You've always been the kindest, the quiet one, the good one. Please don't punish us like this. We're worried. There it was, the soft weaponry of guilt masquerading as concern. Painting Maggie's distance not as a boundary, but a betrayal. She didn't call back, but the words lingered. The good one, not our daughter, not we love you, just a label, a role, a function. The next day, Julie called again. Maggie answered, this time, curious what performance was next. Julie sounded upbeat, almost relieved. Hey, so we've all talked and we want to move on. No more drama, okay? We forgive you. Maggie blinked. You forgive me? Yeah, Julie said as if it were obvious. Everyone's ready to put this behind us. Let's just get back to normal. Maggie's voice was ice. Julie, I wasn't the one who lied or excluded anyone. Julie sighed like she was exhausted from explaining basic things. Mags, it wasn't personal. And yeah, maybe we should have looped you in more, but you overreacted. It hurt a lot of people, but we're past it now. Maggie laughed. It wasn't joyful. It was sharp and short and full of disbelief. You're not past anything, she said. You're just hoping I'll go back to fixing everything so you don't have to. Julie's tone shifted instantly. Wow, I'm trying to make peace and you're being petty. I'm being clear, Maggie said. That's new for me. She hung up. Afterward, she sat quietly, the echo of the call still bouncing around her apartment. She wanted to feel strong, empowered, but instead she felt like someone had opened a door just wide enough to make her hope, only to slam it again in her face. This was the emotional whiplash she had lived with her whole life. Conditional affection, love that came with terms and revisions. She made tea, sat at her window, and watched a pair of crows fight over a crust of bread on the sidewalk. The smaller one snatched it and flew off, leaving the larger stunned. There was something oddly comforting in the chaos of birds. No manipulation, just instinct. She sipped her tea slowly. She was learning finally to do the same. Maggie had stayed quiet longer than she ever had in her life. She hadn't responded to the half apologies, the passive-aggressive calls, or the veiled requests for help. But the final push came when Amanda, her cousin, sent a message that made her heart sink. Hey, just wanted to check. Julie told people you never actually paid. For the party that you offered, then ghosted. I didn't want to believe it, but everyone's been talking. Maggie stared at her phone hands, trembling, not from shock, but from the sheer audacity. So that was the story now. She hadn't been excluded. She'd just been unstable, manipulative, and irresponsible, a flake, a liar. It was one thing to be cut out of her family's events. It was another to have her integrity smeared across whispers and dinner table gossip. Enough. She didn't call Amanda back. Instead, she opened her cloud storage sorted through folders named IV, planning tent, invoice, florist, contract, and catering final. Then she created a new group chat. Her mum, Dad, Julie, Dan, Aunt Claire, Amanda, And Uncle Rick, the family diplomat who never took sides, just watched quietly. Her message was brief. Since there seems to be some confusion, I thought it would be helpful to share the full story. Then she attached the receipts. $2,400 Talon's deposit for the tent cancelled 2 days before event. $200 held in dispute with the caterer. $1,000 paid to the florist for imported orchids. Screenshots of her texts with her mother confirming timelines. The message from Aunt Claire excluding her. Finally, a screenshot of her mother's reply. It's not personal. She sent it all at once. Then she muted the thread, locked her phone, and went for a walk. It was drizzling outside, just enough to cool her skin without soaking her. She breathed deeply, counting her steps, letting the quiet consume her. 2 hours later, she turned her phone back on. It lit up like a storm. 17 missed calls, dozens of unread messages. Julie had gone from defensive to furious. How could you do that? You humiliated Mum. This was a family thing. You're petty and cruel. Her mother sent one line. Did you really have to shame us like this? Her father left 2 voicemails, one irritated, one eerily calm. Both skirting accountability. Aunt Claire had nothing to say, of course, only Amanda messaged privately. I had no idea. I'm sorry. Thank you for showing me the truth. That one message meant more than the rest combined, but still no one said the words she needed to hear. No one said, "We're sorry." Not for the lies, not for the exclusion, not for the character assassination. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were angry for being caught. Maggie didn't respond to any of them. She didn't argue. She had told her story. They could sit with it now, let it itch under their skin the way shame should. 2 days after she dropped the truth into the group chat like a live grenade, Maggie received a message from the most unlikely person, Uncle Rick. The same uncle who never raised his voice, never took sides, who always showed up late and left early, quietly sipping a beer while everyone else argued around him. His message was simple. I always believed you. I just didn't know how to say it. Maggie blinked at the screen. It was the first time someone in her family other than Amanda had acknowledged her side without excuse or evasion. It wasn't grand, it wasn't loud, but it was real. And it cracked something in her that she hadn't realized was still rigid. Then Amanda called, not texted, not messaged, called. Maggie hesitated for a second, then answered. Amanda's voice was shaky. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how bad it was. Maggie stayed silent. I believed what Julie told me. Amanda continued. That you offered to help and then bailed. She said you were having one of your moods again, that you'd always been difficult. God, I repeated it to people. Her voice broke. I feel awful. I didn't ask you. I didn't even think to. Maggie finally spoke. You know now, Amanda sniffled. She's been saying stuff about you for years. I thought I don't know. I guess I thought because you never said anything, it was true. That hit harder than Maggie expected. Yes. Sight is. The silence she'd always maintained, the grace she thought was strength. It had given everyone else permission to fill in the blanks, and they had filled them with lies. Amanda kept talking. After you sent everything, Dad asked me if Julie had ever shown him proof you didn't help. She hadn't. He looked pissed. Maggie didn't smile. She didn't gloat. But a weight shifted off her chest. The cracks were showing. Her family was starting to fracture. Not because she had caused drama, but because she had exposed the truth. The ecosystem that had run smoothly on half-truths and blind loyalty was collapsing under the weight of facts, and Maggie, she stood outside it all. For once, she wasn't trying to fix it. She wasn't rushing in with explanations or soothing words or spreadsheets. She was watching, she was listening, and she was letting it fall apart. In the days that followed, the family group chat devolved. Arguments erupted, screenshots flew back and forth. Claire accused Maggie of orchestrating a public embarrassment. Julie accused Amanda of betrayal. Dan surprisingly stayed silent. Maggie muted.
For the party that you offered, then ghosted. I didn't want to believe it, but everyone's been talking. Maggie stared at her phone hands, trembling. Not from shock, but from the sheer audacity. So that was the story now. She hadn't been excluded. She'd just been unstable, manipulative, and irresponsible. A flake. A liar. It was one thing to be cut out of her family's events. It was another to have her integrity smeared across whispers and dinner table gossip. Enough. She didn't call Amanda back. Instead, she opened her cloud storage, sorted through folders named NIV, planning tent, invoice, florist, contract, and catering final. Then she created a new group chat. Her mom, dad, Julie, Dan, Aunt Claire, Amanda, and Uncle Rick, the family diplomat, who never took sides, just watched quietly. Her message was brief. Since there seems to be some confusion, I thought it would be helpful to share the full story. Then she attached the receipts. $2,400 Talon's deposit for the tent canceled 2 days before event. $3,200 held in dispute with the caterer. $1,000 paid to the florist for imported orchids. Screenshots of her texts with her mother confirming timelines. The message from Aunt Claire excluding her. Finally, a screenshot of her mother's reply. It's not personal. She sent it all at once. Then she muted the thread, locked her phone, and went for a walk. It was drizzling outside, just enough to cool her skin without soaking her. She breathed deeply, counting her steps, letting the quiet consume her. 2 hours later, she turned her phone back on. It lit up like a storm. 17 missed calls. Dozens of unread messages. Julie had gone from defensive to furious. How could you do that? You humiliated Mom. This was a family thing. You're petty and cruel. Her mother sent one line. Did you really have to shame us like this? Her father left 2 voicemails, one irritated, one eerily calm, both skirting accountability. Aunt Claire had nothing to say, of course. Only Amanda messaged privately. I had no idea. I'm sorry. Thank you for showing me the truth. That one message meant more than the rest combined. But still, no one said the word she needed to hear. No one said, "We're sorry." Not for the lies. Not for the exclusion. Not for the character assassination. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were angry for being caught. Maggie didn't respond to any of them. She didn't argue. She had told her story. They could sit with it now. Let it itch under their skin the way shame should. 2 days after she dropped the truth into the group chat like a live grenade, Maggie received a message from the most unlikely person, Uncle Rick. The same uncle who never raised his voice, never took sides, who always showed up late and left early, quietly sipping a beer while everyone else argued around him. His message was simple. I always believed you. I just didn't know how to say it. Maggie blinked at the screen. It was the first time someone in her family other than Amanda had acknowledged her side without excuse or evasion. It wasn't grand. It wasn't loud, but it was real. And it cracked something in her that she hadn't realized was still rigid. Then Amanda called, not texted, not messaged, called. Maggie hesitated for a second, then answered. Amanda's voice was shaky. I'm so sorry. I didn't know how bad it was. Maggie stayed silent. I believed what Julie told me. Amanda continued. That you offered to help and then bailed. She said you were having one of your moods again, that you'd always been difficult. I repeated it to people. Her voice broke. I feel awful. I didn't ask you. I didn't even think to. Maggie finally spoke. You know now. Amanda sniffled. She's been saying stuff about you for years. I thought I don't know. I guess I thought because you never said anything, it was true. That hit harder than Maggie expected. The silence she'd always maintained, the grace she thought was strength, it had given everyone else permission to fill in the blanks, and they had filled them with lies. Amanda kept talking. After you sent everything, Dad asked me if Julie had ever shown him proof you didn't help. She hadn't. He looked pissed. Maggie didn't smile. She didn't gloat. But a weight shifted off her chest. The cracks were showing. Her family was starting to fracture. Not because she had caused drama, but because she had exposed the truth. The ecosystem that had run smoothly on half-truths and blind loyalty was collapsing under the weight of facts. And Maggie? She stood outside it all. For once, she wasn't trying to fix it. She wasn't rushing in with explanations or soothing words or spreadsheets. She was watching. She was listening, and she was letting it fall apart. In the days that followed, the family group chat devolved. Arguments erupted. Screenshots flew back and forth. Claire accused Maggie of orchestrating a public embarrassment. Julie accused Amanda of betrayal. Dan surprisingly stayed silent. Maggie muted.
Right away. She let the card sit on her counter for 2 days. Then, on a rainy Sunday afternoon, she got in her car and drove. The diner was almost empty. A waitress with tired eyes poured coffee and took orders from a couple in the corner. Maggie spotted her parents in a booth by the window. Her mother waved tightly. Her father didn't look up. She slid into the seat across from them. "Thank you for coming," her mother said, already teary. Maggie said nothing. Her dad cleared his throat. "You look well." Still, she stayed silent. Her mum reached across the table, palm up. "We just want to move forward, start fresh. This has gone too far." Maggie looked at her, then at her father, who was still avoiding her eyes. "Did you tell people I cut you off over money?" she asked, voice low. Her father shifted in his seat. "People gossip. I might have said something, but they twist things." Maggie nodded slowly. They do, especially when the story comes pre-twisted. Her mother looked pained. "Maggie, I'm not here to fight," Maggie said. She took a breath, steady and full. "I don't hate you. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm also not coming back." Her parents stared at her like she had spoken in a foreign language. "I don't want revenge. I don't want drama. I just want space, boundaries, respect." Her mother's eyes filled. "We miss you." "I know," Maggie said. "You miss what I used to do for you." Her father finally met her gaze. There was something in his eyes, not guilt, not quite. Maybe recognition. "We didn't know it had gotten this bad," he said. "It didn't get bad," Maggie replied. "It was always this way. I just stopped pretending it wasn't." The silence between them was soft, not tense, just final. After a few minutes, Maggie stood. "This isn't goodbye," she said, "but it's not a return either." She left enough money on the table for her coffee and walked out into the drizzle, her coat pulled tight. The air smelled like wet leaves and pavement, and for the first time, she didn't look back. It had been almost a month since the diner meeting. Maggie had resumed her routine's work, woodworking evening walks without disruption. She wasn't waiting for more messages or hoping for some grand gesture. She had accepted the quiet. Then Amanda reached out. It wasn't a text or call this time. It was a letter tucked in a small envelope with no return address. Inside was a short note written in Amanda's neat handwriting. Can we talk coffee? My treat. It's not about them. It's about something I thought you should know. Curiosity tugged at her. They met at a small cafe on a rainy Wednesday morning. Amanda was already seated, fidgeting with a paper napkin, a half-drunk latte in front of her. She looked up as Maggie approached and gave a small, unsure smile. Thanks for coming. Maggie nodded, sat down, waited. Amanda didn't waste time. Your mum's been going to therapy, real therapy, weekly, she told me, after Thanksgiving fell apart again. Maggie's eyebrows lifted. Therapy? Amanda nodded. Apparently, after you walked away, stuff started breaking more than we realized. My sister stopped visiting, my dad started asking questions. Some of the cousins, quiet ones, started keeping their distance. She paused, then added, Your mum tried planning another event. No one helped. She broke down. Maggie stayed silent, letting it all sink in. Amanda leaned forward, voice lower. Her therapist told her to write you a real apology. She hasn't sent it. She's scared you won't care. Or worse, you'll ignore it. Maggie's throat tightened. Why are you telling me this? Amanda's expression softened. Because you deserve to know. And because I think she finally sees it. What she did, what you've been carrying. Maggie didn't respond right away. She just stared at the foam on her coffee, swirling her spoon slowly. Before she left, Amanda handed her another envelope. From your dad, she said. Later that night, back at her apartment, Maggie sat on the couch and opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper, no card, no signature, just one sentence written in her father's rigid, slanted handwriting. I'm trying to learn how to be a dad. That was it. Maggie stared at it for a long time. It wasn't a confession, it wasn't absolution, but it was more honest than anything he'd said in years. The next day she went for a drive. The roads were familiar, lined with trees just beginning to shed their leaves. She didn't turn on music, she didn't call ahead. She drove slowly past her parents' house. Lights were on. Her mother's favourite lamp flickered in the living room. The TV cast soft flashes against the blinds. Someone her father maybe was sitting in the chair near the window reading. Maggie didn't stop. She didn't honk. She didn't wave. She just sat in her car down the street watching for a few quiet minutes. Then she turned the engine back on and drove away. She didn't feel triumphant. She felt calm. The kind of calm that comes not from winning, but from walking away before you lose more than yourself. A week after her quiet drive past the old house, Maggie received a final letter. This one came in a slightly crumpled envelope addressed in her mother's handwriting, neat but with small hesitations in the loops, as if her hand had second-guessed every stroke. Inside was a folded piece of stationery, soft pink, with faint floral borders. The letter was dated 2 weeks prior. It began plainly. Maggie, I wrote this and didn't send it. I didn't know if I should or if it would make things worse, but Amanda said maybe you'd want to read it, so I'm trying. There was no greeting beyond that. No, dear, just a woman stepping carefully through broken ground. I think I've made you feel like you didn't matter. I never said that out loud. But silence says a lot, doesn't it? Maggie felt her throat tighten. I've been in therapy for 6 sessions. That doesn't fix everything, I know, but I've started saying things out loud that I've kept hidden. Like the fact that I depended on your strength so much, I forgot you needed softness too. I thought Maggie doesn't need attention meant I was respecting your independence. I see now that it meant I was neglecting you. There was a long paragraph she had to read twice the letters trembling on the page. I didn't send this before because I'm scared. I'm scared that maybe you don't need me anymore, that after everything you're better off without us, without me. That sentence hit harder than the rest. It wasn't a manipulative plea, it was honest fear. She finished the letter, folded it gently, and placed it beside her cup of tea. Then she did something she hadn't done in months. She sat down at her desk, pulled out a pen, and wrote a letter back. No email, no text, just ink on paper. Mum, you don't need to apologize again. What you do from here matters more. I don't hate you. I'm not waiting for you to be perfect, but I'm also not stepping back into what we had before. If something new is possible, something honest, something mutual, I'm open to seeing what that looks like. But I'm not the same daughter I was, and I don't want to be. Let's not pretend the past didn't happen. Let's just agree. It doesn't have to be our future. She signed it simply. Maggie, no love, no flourish, just a name. She mailed it the next morning. There was no immediate reply, no sudden burst of reconciliation, but she didn't expect one. What she had now was space. Not the cold, distant kind, but the gentle, uncertain kind. The kind where something new might grow if they let it. And if they didn't, she would still be okay. Because she had reclaimed something far more valuable than any inheritance, any apology.